Well, John, Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for that very generous introduction, and thank you for inviting me to speak and for hosting the lecture. Speaker's House at the House of Commons. I can't think of a better place to say what I'm going to this evening. I hope the foundations are still secure when I've finished. I've always thought it odd that my colleagues on the left often seem so uncomfortable with patriotism. But I only began to think about the politics of national identity seriously when David Blunkett asked me to lead the response to the Northern riots of 2001. And it was Ted Cantle's groundbreaking report that highlighted the lack of any shared national identity between the white and the Pakistani origin youths in that conflict. The subsequent debate to that was centred on British identity. But I began to realise, partly from my own sense of English identity and partly from that of my constituents, that it was English identity that was most contested, most challenged and also ignored. And I'm very grateful to the University of Winchester who've given me the space to explore these issues to some degree. And tonight I want to talk about England, its divisions and its governance. England is deeply divided. We're divided by our poverty and our prosperity, between London and the South East and most of the rest of England, yes, and within the wealthier regions too. In many parts of England, city centres may be prospering while nearby towns lose their purpose and their able young people. The lines that divide us are being redrawn. Poor white working class children from towns and the seaside are now more likely to do less well in school than most, though not all, ethnic minority kids of the large cities. But race and faith, prejudice and discrimination still have the power to divide us. We're divided by our experiences and our values. Age, class and higher education are strong predictors of which of us is likely to hold individual cosmopolitan liberal views and which to hold to a more communitarian social conservatism. And these differences don't map readily, as you all know, onto the familiar divides of class, of left and right. Older working class voters may be less keen on rapid immigration